All right, so I'm here to discuss that we have an incredible opportunity in New York City to improve the way we run our elections. With the formation of the Mayoral Charter Revision Commission, they've been charged with assessing current structures and looking for ways to increase the voice of the voters. With this goal in mind, we strongly urge them to consider instant runoff voting. Instant runoff voting would combine two elections into one. Instead of having a primary and a runoff election, voters would be able to rank candidates in order of choice. If no candidate receives a majority, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and voters who selected that candidate would have their vote instantly go to their second choice. This process would continue until a candidate is elected with a majority. Instant runoff voting is already used in 15 cities across the United States. Cities that have adopted instant runoff voting to eliminate runoffs have not only saved millions of dollars, but have also improved their democracies by making sure that we are electing our leaders in an election where the most voters, the most diverse voters, are at the polls at one time. So with that, I'm going to introduce a Fair Vote board member for 20 years, Rick Hertzberg. He has been with the New Yorker, also the Nation Institute, has been the editor of the New Republic and was a speechwriter for President Jimmy Carter.
Oh, thank you. This is a wonderful chance for New York to regain its former status as the place that experiments with better technology for elections. And what this measure would do really is it would guarantee that whoever is elected at least has the grudging okay, at least has the grudging approval of a majority.
Oh, come on, we're aiming for better than grudging.
Well, we haven't done so well in the past. And it would also mean more voices, because it would mean that you could run for office without being a spoiler. So it's really a great thing, and I've been hounding people to adopt it for 20 years, and to see it come to my hometown, which I dearly love, is really a pleasure.
All right. Yay.
Thank you. Now we'd like to invite up Public Advocate Tish James.
All right.
So, I am the face of instant runoff. Let me remind you. I won a runoff election to the Office of Public Advocate in 2013. That runoff cost between, some estimates, $10 to $13 million in the city of New York. That is more than my budget, not just in 1 year, but in 4 years, my entire first term. And I would argue that democracy is priceless. But the good news is that in this case, we can be fiscally responsible, and there is an option. The least expensive, more democratic option is instant runoff, and the time has come to make it a reality here in New York City. With instant runoff, voters simply rank the candidates by order of preference. If one candidate wins with a majority of first-choice votes, it's over. He or she wins. If no one wins on the first go-round, the person receiving the lowest number of choice votes is eliminated, and those votes are distributed to the second choice on those ballots. This process continues until one candidate reaches a majority of the votes. In an instant runoff, you don't have to cater to your own base because you are concerned, obviously, that if the first choice does not win, those votes will go to the second one. So it forces you to appeal to all voters as opposed to one Democratic base. And this means more engagement and less polarization and more democracy. It means listening to people you might not usually listen to, and it means a freer exchange of ideas, and it's consistent with the notion of, with our principle of democracy and free elections. And so it's harder to get people, it's hard enough to get people to the polls once, let alone a second time. And so runoff elections are historically ultra low turnout with a wealthier, less diverse electorate. My runoff election, there was only 300,000 individuals who came out to vote for an election which cost, again, between $10 to $13 million, a 62% drop-off from the primary. And so it's really critically important that individuals come out and support this initiative. Instant runoff could have prevented the election of someone who obviously only appeals to one constituency. And as was mentioned, we have seen instant runoffs in a number of cities throughout our country: San Francisco, Oakland, Minneapolis, as well as in the city of London. And it can work here too. Even as someone who was elected with the runoff system, I still believe that it is costly, it's polarizing, and inconvenient. And rank choice voting would better serve the people of New York. So whatever you think about this proposal, just think about the Office of Public Advocate, and just think about coming out again to vote, and just think about saving money to taxpayers in the city of New York. Thank you.
Thank you. We'd now like to invite up New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. So in 2009, the controller primary, in the first go-round, 11% of the voters came out. The runoff was even worse, 8.4% of voters, cost $15 million. As the public advocate said about the public advocate's race, 23% of the people voted in 2013 the primary, 7% of voters came out the second go-around, cost $13 million. I believe that democracy is best served when we don't think about the cost of elections. And that is certainly something we've always said, that money should not be a roadblock. But what's happening is our arcane laws are actually preventing full participatory democracy in very important elections. And that is why instant runoff is a progressive leap to try to get the most bang for the buck in the primary and settle everything on that day or into the night. You know, part of how we do things in the state is we end up creating more cost and less effective representation. One of the things that I released a year ago, including instant runoff, was also this whole notion that just this year we have a June primary for Congress and then a September primary for all the other elections. In a presidential year, we actually have 3 primaries. This is costing tens of millions of dollars. Then we go to city elections, and we have costly runoffs, and yet the population that's voting is actually going spiraling downward. Part of what we have to do is we have a unique opportunity this year. We don't have to go to Albany and deal with that political dysfunction in order to get this electoral reform. Right here, right now, Mayor de Blasio has issued a call for a charter revision to deal with electoral politics, to increase voter participation, to give people a fresh way of voting, a more easier way of voting, and that's why this is so timely. That's why I want to thank Councilmember Reynoso, Councilmember Lander, all the community-based organizations, because let's get this done with the Charter Revision Commission. I call on the Charter Revision members to support this initiative and then bring it to the voters this November so we are ready in 2021 to have a fair, open, and inclusive Democratic primary, as our entire city government will change. All new elected officials, 5 new borough presidents, 40-some-odd new council members. This is something that works for the 3 citywide elected officials, and that's as it should be. Thank you very much.
All right, now we'd like to invite up Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I want to add my voice, particularly to those council persons who saw the foresight to look at how do we make our electoral system more applicable to the times that we're in. We cannot continue to have an 8-track method in iPhone age. It is time to ensure that the process encourages people to come out. We live in real time. We believe in instant time, and everything that we do, let's make sure that the runoff elections is a thing of the past, and let's do it in the right way. This makes sense. It saves dollars and cents. There's no reason to move it in the right direction. Thank you.
Now we'd like to invite up Councilmember Brad Lander.
Thank you. Thanks to Fair Vote for helping organize, and to Citizens Union, and to the Public Advocate and the Comptroller and my borough president from the best borough. There won't be ranks for which borough you think is best. That's just, one at a time. As you've heard, instant runoff voting is a win-win-win. It increases participation and avoids these low turnout, high-cost primary runoffs. It saves money, and it gives encouragement for all candidates to campaign in all communities. So it really makes just enormous sense. Just a couple of notes on practicalities. As you heard, this is now being done in cities all across the country. One of those cities, Minneapolis, has the same voting machines that we do. So the software already exists to do this. It would have to get certified here, but it already exists. They've run several elections in Minneapolis with it. As a result, Minneapolis' city council is more diverse, has more women, more people of color than it's ever had before, and they've had higher participation and turnout than they've ever had before. Instant runoff voting is working. And I'll just underline what the comptroller said about the opportunity created by the Charter Revision Commission. The Charter Revision Commission is meeting now in all 5 boroughs. They're going to drill down and look at issues related to voting and democracy, explore them, and bring a ballot proposal to the voters in November. It is a wonderful opportunity to give the voters a chance to bring instant runoff voting to New York City in plenty of time for the 2021 cycle to save money and strengthen our democracy in New York City. Thank you.
All right, and last but not least, we have Doug Kellner, the co-chair of the New York State Board of Elections.
So our job as election officials is not to make the policy, but to implement it. And I'm here simply to confirm that New York City would be able to implement instant runoff voting. As Councilman Lander pointed out, the city of Minneapolis switched to instant runoff voting for its elections several years ago. They've held many elections, and they use the same voting equipment that New York City uses. So that our DS200 electronic scanning voting machines are ready and able to be used for instant runoff voting. And in the process of switching to instant runoff voting, as so many people have pointed out, the city would save very substantial funds, anywhere from $10 to $15 million by switching to instant runoff voting. In a process where we've found from prior runoff elections that the turnout drops dramatically, and so there isn't great value in having that second runoff election when it could be done all in one operation and save those substantial costs.
So we've had a couple council members join us, and we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to speak. So now I'd like to invite up Council Member Antonio Reynoso.
I want to make 2 points that I think have been made, but just want to talk on diversity. We know that during primaries, the amount of people that come out are more representative of the demographics of the city of New York than we get on runoffs, which tend to be whiter, older, and richer. And we want to make sure that the people that represent us are elected by a population as close as possible, that reflects as close as possible the city of New York. Also want to talk about polarization. What ends up happening is that elected officials can't just take a polarizing stand or a very radical stand on certain issues. They need to get the second and third place votes as well, which makes it so that they're more representative, again, through ideology of the larger population of the people that they want to represent. This would really allow for us to move forward in an age where it seems like it's always us against them. In New York City, I think we could really start being a model that is more representative of a we. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to voting on this, and thank you to Brad Lander and everyone that's participated so far. Thank you.
All right, and we're inviting up Councilmember Ben Callis.
Thank you. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you find you get what you need. Currently, our democracy is zero-sum. It's one against the other. It's two-party. It's a system where if the person you voted for doesn't win, you feel like a big loser, and that is outside the context of the presidential election where America feels like a big loser. But the key thing here is in ranked choice voting, folks will actually get to vote for more than one person, and in so doing, they'll actually be able to still feel like a winner if their number 2 choice or their number 3 choice actually makes it. Also, this is just a huge opportunity in the 2014-2017 council when I was chair of the Governmental Operations Committee. I was eager to get this done, but there was no appetite for charter revision. Now all I hear every day is charter revision, charter revision, charter revision, and I agree with our controller, the time is now. Whether it is passing this legislation and having it voted on alongside the Mayor's Charter Revision Commission or his commission adopting it, doesn't matter how it gets on the ballot, but it should be on the ballot in time for 2021 so we don't end up in a situation where, and forgive me in terms of disagreeing with the controller, $13 million is a lot of money. That is enough to feed half of every child a school lunch, and we could spend that in a much better place. And so I would say that this can save so much money, especially when you're talking about so many different offices and special elections and so on and so forth. So I would just love to see this get done. And we've been trying to get this done for quite some time. And I want to thank Councilmember Brad Lander for not giving up and continuing to carry this football. And I hope that this is the year to get it done. Thank you.
All right, I want to thank all of our speakers on behalf of Fair Vote and all of the community groups that are here to join us today. We appreciate your support, and we're really looking forward to continuing to work with you all. Right now, we can take a few questions if folks have any.
Awesome. So where is the opposition in this? Is there opposition? Is anybody against it, or is it just a lack of enthusiasm to get this on the front burner?
So I think it's just an issue that it's change, and change is not always easy. This is a change to our election processes, and that's not something we're always ready to do. It also needs lead time because in order to get the system ready, it's going to take a couple of years. So we looked at this in the first year of the last term, back in 2014. And yeah, there was just so much going on. There was so much change at that moment that getting it passed in that first year, we didn't prove possible. It has to have a referendum. Whether it would be done by Charter Revision Commission or whether the council would pass a law, it needs to go on the ballot. So it's got to get done early enough in the year that it can be on the ballot by November. It's really best to do it in the first year of the cycle to give the Board of Elections plenty of time to prepare. So I have not heard any opposition. It's just more the work to build momentum to make something new happen. Even if it's a win-win, it's still work to make that change.
There's no partisan divide.
I have not heard any opposition, and this is not, I guess this is worth underlining, this is not nonpartisan elections or something like that. This would be, the proposal is to have instant runoff voting in the primaries. That's where the runoff requirement currently is, and perhaps in the special elections where you only have one round at the council level. That's obviously part of what the Charter Revision Commission needs to look at. But I have not heard any opposition. It's not a partisan issue. I think Democrats and Republicans alike like saving money, increasing turnout. So that's the goal.
I just want to give context to this.
Let me just jump in 1 second. So let me just say this. There is the possibility we may need legislative action in Albany. Why do I say that? Because there is a state law which governs our ballots. And to change the ballot to instant runoff would require, I think, perhaps state action. And so I'm not sure whether or not, I don't know where the state legislature stands on this issue, but we're still examining that issue. And two, the other issue is this. During my runoff, only 300,000 individuals came out, but there was less people of color who came out. The large majority of individuals who came out were white. And so there is a concern among some individuals about educating all constituencies about the benefits of instant runoff, particularly as it relates to lowering their tax burden and the cost. And so those are the issues. And so we need time to educate the electorate all over the city of New York with respect to the benefits of instant turnoff, particularly in underrepresented communities. Sorry.
All points well taken. I just want to give some context, though, to the runoff process. So back in 1969, when there was a multi-candidate race for mayor, Mario Procaccino, who was on the most extreme sort of right side back then, voters were concerned that we would elect a mayor with 25% of the vote in a Democratic primary. So the runoff was created for the 1973 election, where you had Badillo and Beam, and then you had the runoff ever since. The reason I think people have been reluctant to deal with the problems in the runoff is because we don't want to see eight-way races come down to the winner only getting 20% of the vote. That's exactly what happened in 1977 when Koch, Cuomo, Abzug, and Beam, basically the winner got 22%. So the runoff becomes the majority process. What we've learned since the runoff is that people are not voting and coming out the second time. So what I like about instant runoff, it blends the goal. The goal is to create a majority for the winner of a Democratic or Republican primary, and at the same time, we now don't have to go through a 2-week lag where the runoff hits 7-8% of the vote. When only a few 100,000 people are voting in a runoff, it's not an election. It just is a snapshot of the most active, and we want to expand that electorate. So I think instant runoff gives us that blend that we've been looking forward to since 1969.
Let me just say one thing. Council lawyers do believe that for municipal elections, the city has the power to do it. There are obviously advocates. Senator Kavanaugh is a big advocate of doing this at the state level. Of course, we could not do it in state or federal elections, but council attorneys believe that for municipal elections, we have the power, the people have the power. It has to pass by referendum to do ranked choice at the local level without Albany authorization. So what I think we're saying today is that we want the Charter Revision Commission to do a deep dive and figure out the right details of bringing instant runoff voting to New York City, and we haven't yet worked out all the details of precisely which elections. But yes, right now, the way that the 40% requirement exists is on those primaries. You don't have this problem generally in a general election because you got, two parties, and so somebody gets a majority. This comes out of the experience that Scott mentioned in the primaries, and that is where we've seen these low turnout, expensive runoff elections. One other place people think we should look, and I'll just speak personally here, I think council special elections are a good place to do this as well, because there you just have one election, and some people may remember the race that Donovan Richards won out in the Rockaways, where I think there were 7 African-American candidates and 1 white candidate, and so all the African-American candidates split the vote. Donovan won that race, but with less than 20% of the vote. So you could imagine a situation where not only did a candidate get a relatively low percentage of the vote, but they really were not representative of the broader community. So council special elections might also be a good place to look. What we're saying for today is this is a smart voting technology to bring to New York, and we'd like to see the Charter Revision Commission bring experts together, put the details in place, and develop a ballot proposal for precisely which elections.
And let me just say, there's nothing preventing the commission that Manhattan Borough President and I are convening to also look at this issue, if in fact the mayoral commission fails to do so. And let me just also go on to say the most recent example is what happened in St. Louis, where you had in the mayoral race, where you had a conservative individual just garner a small amount of votes. And obviously, and they just came from one particular base, and he's the mayor of a largely liberal and progressive city. Sure. No comment. Next. No. By no means. As I mentioned at the outset, I am the poster child for instant runoff. $10 to $13 million for a race where only 300,000 individuals came out to vote. For me, this is being fiscally responsible.
And I think the mayor, when he was public advocate, was against this, right? What makes you think he's going to support it this time around?
I believe, again, he has convened a charter commission, and I would urge all of the commissioners of that Charter Revision Commission to look at this particular issue, since they are looking at civic engagement. And it's really critically important, but most importantly, it goes really to the heart of our democracy. And I just don't believe that we could have a situation as what happened in St. Louis. We could have a situation that has previously happened in our history, in our recent past history. And I think it's really critically important that we, again, make it easier for individuals to elect the candidate of their choice. And again, $13 million for an office where the budget is less than that, significantly less than that, let me add that, and $13 million, which is more than we spent in our entire first term.
What did you ask again?
I wanted to know, you both rumored or potential 2021 mayoral candidates, right? So is this push for instant runoff voting in any way connected to your political views? Are you concerned that people aren't going to come out when you guys run?
I just want to get it overall, and I'll get it over in one night. No, just kidding. I really think in studying instant runoff that this isn't about an individual candidate. I think you can, political consultants can tell you 10 different things. I think the reality is it really is about voter participation. And using the 1969 example, we have been studying this for the last 40 some odd years. Conservatives have one view, progressives have another view, but the one thing that's clear is we need to create a system for full participation, because at the end of the day, if you've ever run for office, it is just disheartening to see the relatively small amount of people who are deciding the future of the city. So I think all of us who run for office, council members, citywide elected officials, we want to hit this. And by the way, instant runoff in and of itself is not enough. We need same-day voter registration.
Yes.
We need to start thinking about an electoral package. I think today we'll stand with instant voting, but I hope to come back here during the charter revision process and lay out an agenda for the Mayor's Charter Revision Commission. He said he wants to reform the laws. So let's reform the laws and bring a comprehensive charter revision electoral reform package to the city. I am convinced that we don't have to go to Albany on this. I think the people can speak in the charter revision process, and we certainly should give it that try. Thank you.
On this, we stand together.
Right.
As always.
And one small process point. So a Charter Revision Commission, it doesn't come back to the mayor. It's not like a council bill that comes back to the mayor for signature. If the majority of the Charter Revision Commission vote to put a proposal on the ballot, then it goes on the ballot and the voters decide.
So when you say the Charter Revision Commission, so there are two, right? So even if the mayor doesn't consider it, would some of you up here have appointees on the council commission? You know what I mean? The other
Yeah.
This could be done.
Appoint people who are interested in looking into this. Could that commission do it?
So the commission, again, that was as a result of legislation sponsored by the Manhattan Borough President and I, again, is all-encompassing. Everything is on the table except term limits. And so this issue also can be considered by the Charter Commission that's being put forth. And it's, again, the Charter Commission that we've convened obviously will be more deliberate and will have more time to consider a wide range of issues in our city charter, a charter which has not been reviewed in over 30 years. And so I think it's much more comprehensive, and we're not, again, forestalling any issue.
And if it's not done by Charter Revision Commission, then we'll look again at the council at doing it by local law, which would still need to go on the ballot for a referendum. But from a timing point of view, the Mayor's Commission takes time precedence. So if it develops ballot proposals, they're going to be on the ballot in November, and that would bump the council and public advocate and Manhattan Borough President's Commission proposals to next year, and legislation falls behind that. So the best thing, for the reasons both that the public advocate said in terms of educating voters and giving the Board of Elections the time to put the system in place, would be to get it done this November. And the way to do that is if the current Charter Revision Commission will develop the ballot proposal.
The other thing is, I am not in favor of doing this. It would be unfortunate if we had to wait to our council Charter Revision Commission, because this would be a real sea change in how people vote. You're not filling in an oval, you're not clicking a ballot. We would be having to number one or two. So there would be a real education campaign that should play out over 4 years.
How many selections would you have to make? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the whole field, or could you just make 3?
The Minneapolis system is top 3. There are different ways of doing it. That's part of what the commission would need to research and develop the specific proposal for.
Would this make voting longer? Longer time in the booth?
Right.
Presumably?
Cities where this is being done, we have not found that it's taking folks a longer time in the booth.
By the way, as you point out, this is so fascinating. You don't necessarily have to do a second choice.
take your top
So-
choice and walk away.
Yeah, you,
Yeah.
that's what, it's democracy, you know. All right, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, everybody.
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.